Hello and welcome to Reclaim, Restore, and More, a podcast dedicated to digging deeper into the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement. We will be highlighting stories from the people who work here and the reclamation projects throughout the states and tribes. My name is Bailey, and I will be your host. Today on the show, we're excited to have Anesa Owen, a mentor who is an OSMRE. She's going to share her experience on working in a federal environment. Hi, Anesa. Welcome to Reclaim, Restore, and More.
Hi, Bailey. Great to be here.
Awesome. Could you go into a little detail on what you do and some of your career history?
Oh, big question. I'll start with career history. How far back do you want me to go, though?
Where would you say your interest in federal work or Americorps started?
Okay. Well, I'll say it started mostly just because when I graduated from college in 2011, I could not find a job. So it was kind of right at the time when there weren't really a whole lot of jobs. And I had a degree in geology, so it was kind of hard to find one anyway. So I started looking for other options, which is how I actually stumbled upon AmeriCorps. And I ended up doing 3 state and national service terms, 1 in Big Bend National Park in Texas, and then 2 at Lava Beds National Monument in Northern California. So I finished with those, and because they were all short-term service terms, I didn't get non-competitive eligibility. So still, it was hard for me to find a job. And at this point, after doing those, I thought that I wanted to pursue federal government career. So I ended up applying for 3 different positions with, at the time, it was called the Appalachian Coal Country Watershed Team, which is now Conservation Legacy. And I actually was offered all 3 of the positions I had applied for.
Oh, wow.
But I ended up choosing to go work in Pottstown, Pennsylvania with the Schuylkill River National and National Heritage area. So I served there for a year, which finished in 2014. And literally a month after I finished, I got a call from OSM and had 2 interviews set up for 2 different positions and ended up taking one and started with OSM in July of 2014 as a reclamation specialist, or which we call in the field offices just an inspector. So
awesome. So it was your first time experiencing like federal environment, and you said it was kind of out of a little bit of necessity trying to find a job at the time. Going into, I guess, AmeriCorps, what were you expecting?
Really, I didn't have any expectations. And I gained so much more experience than I was expecting to have. I did so many different things between my state and national service terms and then my Vista year. Big Bend, I was out there doing mostly interpretation for the Park Service, but also got to work with the natural resources side. So I went from one day working in a visitor center to the next day going out helping trap a mountain lion to tag it. So just very broad range of stuff, and kind of the same thing. And when I was in California, one day in the visitor center, the next day I was helping survey caves and map out where bat colonies were. So just a great experience overall. And that's really what drew me to a federal career. And while I haven't got to do quite as many exciting things in what I'm currently doing, still I feel like day to day, I have some variety. It's not the same thing over and over again. Especially, working out in the field. I actually transitioned to a different job once COVID hit. So now I'm in the office a little bit more, which is a little sad, but everything COVID has changed. So really
right.
kind of a different environment overall.
COVID has affected just so much. It's kind of interesting to think about how many people's jobs have changed because of COVID as well. As far as I know you're mentoring right now, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So how does that feel, being someone who was in AmeriCorps and now you're mentoring someone else who's starting that journey?
It's pretty great making the transition from, helping someone who really is kind of similarly placed to what I was a few years ago, but also very different. Also, again, with the COVID, my AmeriCorps terms were very hands-on, in-person experiences. And since we've been under max telework the whole time that she's been serving with us, it's a very different experience. Most of our interaction has been through video chats and email, and I feel bad for her just because she's not getting as much of a hands-on experience as what really I feel like the whole AmeriCorps program is set up for. But I think it has worked out really well for her. I know that she's finishing next month, and I think already has some interviews lined up. She did get non-competitive eligibility, so I think it's a great way to go if you want to get into the government.
What are some misconceptions you think people have about federal work or AmeriCorps?
And I guess it depends on which way you're looking at it, because I think the people serving with AmeriCorps probably have different, viewpoints on it than, say, my boss, who hasn't been in AmeriCorps but is yet also helping supervise an AmeriCorps. It depends on which branch you're in as well.
Yeah.
I was like, it gets very complicated going back and forth between the state and national and the Vistas and, the other variety of programs that they offer. But I think it's very easy for, on the federal side, them to look at the AmeriCorps members as just kind of interns to do whatever they need done. Whereas, AmeriCorps itself has a very different mission than just being free, busy work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that one is hard to get across sometimes. And until you've participated in it, I think it's a little harder to understand, like, the reasoning behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
As far as federal government, I don't know. I feel like all the misconceptions around federal government work, that we're just overpaid people who sit in the office all day and don't do anything.
Yeah. So what are your future career plans looking like?
That's an excellent question. I'm like, since I've only been in this position for not even a year now, I'm now currently a program specialist. So before I started on the regulatory side for OSM, like I said, just doing inspections. Now I'm doing more with the AML side as well. So that's kind of a whole new ball game. So I think, especially after this infrastructure bill was passed, that's probably going to end up taking up a lot more of my time. And I haven't got to do a whole lot with that yet. So we'll see.
What's your normal day-to-day kind of look like?
Right now, with us still under max telework, it's a lot of meetings, a lot of meetings through Teams, and just kind of planning for when we do go back in the office. So I'm also the safety officer for our office. So I have quite a few different roles I end up having to do. And then in addition to serving as mentor for our AmeriCorps, yeah, a lot of computer work right now, but I do get to go out in the field some still and inspect some of our AML pilot projects. So that's a nice break that I get every once in a while.
Yeah, that's fun. Trying to get out of the office every once in a while. Um, Normally, if we did not have COVID restrictions, would you be out more often?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this transition works once we start kind of moving back into the office next spring.
Hmm.
So, but we've had just a lot of changes overall. A lot of people retire, a lot of people leave.
Hmm.
So it's kind of going to be a new ball game for everyone next spring because just everything's going to be different. We're going to have a lot of new employees, and
Hmm.
in some cases we actually just opened a new office in our Virginia office. So lot of changes.
As you know, the pandemic's been going on. We have a lot of open spaces throughout the country, I would say, for jobs. Like you were just talking about, you have a ton of new positions coming in. People are retiring, usually around that spring season. It's would you say the federal government's also having, you know, a need for new hires?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I know that they OSM loves picking up AmeriCorps when they can. It just makes it so much easier for hiring. So that's really great. But I would say we're down at least 30% just on our positions in West
Mm,
Virginia and Virginia. So that's not even looking at OSM as a whole, but or even the federal government as a whole. I think the federal government's just at the stage where they're losing so many people that have been here for 20, 30 years, and trying to backfill all those at one time is a little overwhelming.
right. And I think it's interesting because we have a ton of people graduating right now, and we've got a ton of job positions available. But it's also kind of hard to get hired. At least I feel like a lot of people I know around my age have been lamenting on the jobs they wanted not being available, even though there's so many positions for what feels like everything else. Do you think federal is a great option?
I think it is. I mean, I've been happy with my job. I mean, it's great pay, get great benefits, and it might not be as high as some of the private sector jobs available, but it's also more stable. So,
Hmm.
we don't really have to worry about downsizing and losing our jobs. So, especially during this time of economic uncertainty where you don't really know what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so for those people who are graduating, haven't done, AmeriCorps, haven't really thought about federal before, what's a great way for them to get their foot in the door?
I think AmeriCorps overall is a great way to get your foot in the door if you're looking at possibly going into a federal career. I mean,
Hmm.
even if you're just graduating and you're not quite sure, and there are so many really cool opportunities on the AmeriCorps website. And I know Conservation Legacy has, the same listings on theirs as well, but there's definitely more on the AmeriCorps website. But it's just something to check out. If you're not really sure, it's always better to like go out and try and test the waters and see if you are interested in something, even if it's just marking it out, crossing it off the list of no, that didn't work for me. At least
Hmm.
you tried it out.
And the very least, you might get to go somewhere new.
Yeah, yeah. Or do something really cool you never thought you were going to do. Like our AmeriCorps just got to go for the little piece that she served on public lands to get her non competitive eligibility. She worked with Fish and Wildlife in Florida, and she got to go do water sampling in one of the hot springs there and swim with manatees. So,
It sounds like a really wonderful field trip almost.
yeah.
uh, but it's with work. So,
Yeah, I was like,
um,
getting paid to swim with manatees is a yeah, how many people get to do that?
Yeah, how is that a lose-lose? It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
And at the very least, you could put it on a resume, say, I did AmeriCorps.
Yeah, exactly.
You talked briefly or mentioned the Vista program. I feel like AmeriCorps is definitely more popular, or it's more commonly spoken about. So could you explain just a little bit about what Vista is?
Sure. Vista is a branch under AmeriCorps. So they have a couple of different branches of service. And Vista is primarily more focused on that sort of lens, of service, helping with poverty and other things you can do to help the community. So I know in my Vista year specifically, I was working with local youth, setting up an education program for some of the uh, more underfunded schools in the area. And then I also was working trying to raise money to help um, create opportunities on the section of trail that they have up there. They're working on making a full length trail down along the Schuylkill River. And then, getting volunteers to come out and help with that. And it, goes through Valley Forge. So it's a big popular area right outside of Philadelphia. So a lot of, Vista is definitely a little different, and it is a year-long commitment where some of the other ones are a little shorter,
A little less intense.
a little less intense. And then, you have the NCCC, which commonly they are ended up doing like the trail cruise, that sort of thing. So there's really a wide range of experiences under the AmeriCorps umbrella. If you don't want to commit a full year, you could always do something shorter just to try something new and see what you might be interested in.
Right. And even like what I'm doing right now is kind of under that umbrella, interning with OSMRE. I'm going through conservation legacy, even though it's not the same, but I still get to have that experience. So there's a lot of pathways for people who might have different interests.
I mean, I would just definitely recommend anyone who thinks they might be interested to check out all the resources that are available to them. I mean, there's a lot out there if you just get online and start searching. So, I mean, I didn't expect to be here when I first started searching. I kind of was just like, I need to get away from home and go experience something. So, I didn't plan to be in Texas, but it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And here I am after, let's see, that from the time I started AmeriCorps service to the time I was hired on with the government, it was little over 2 years. So, in the grand scheme of your career, it was pretty quick.
Could you give some good advice for people who are considering going to AmeriCorps?
Definitely find out, if you're actually seriously considering it, find out everything about the site before you go and just be prepared, because you do get just a stipend, which is sometimes a shock depending on how much you're getting paid. My Vista year, I got paid more, but serving with the state and national, it was not a big paycheck. And so I should have budgeted a little bit better for that. And then, there's always issues come up that you never expect, even now in the federal government. When I first went to Big Bend, how I was getting paid was they sent me a debit card and then they just kind of load money onto it. But the card didn't arrive. So I was in Texas for 2 weeks and didn't have this card that they were supposed to be paying me with, and they had no idea what happened to it. So, you just have to be a little prepared and then learn to roll with the punches.
I think that's about
everything I have to ask, but I always love to ask if you have anything you would like to add. The floor is yours.
I think we've covered a lot, but definitely I highly recommend AmeriCorps. I've had a chance to kind of stay connected with a lot of people that I worked with during my service terms, and actually, because Conservation Legacy has its office in Beckley, where I'm at, I still get to communicate with them fairly frequently, and then also with my mentoring. So, it's just kind of nice tying that all back in together, my service term and then what I'm doing now. And the federal government is really a small bubble. It's surprising the number of people you'll meet that end up popping back up somewhere else, or, know someone that you meet later on down the line. Especially if you get in with Park Service, it's a very close knit little bubble. I mean, I guess each agency has its own little bubble, but it's just great. And even if you're not looking to stay, it's a great way to network and meet a lot of people who know not just federal government employees, but we're really involved in local nonprofits. And then, obviously we have some dealings with private sector, not as much, but some. So, you kind of get exposed to the other sectors of employment, not just the federal government. So,
Anesa, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure getting to talk with you. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Reclaim, Restore, and More. If you want to learn more about what's going on at OSMRE, please check out osmre.gov. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.